A spiritual awakening is a momentous event where your life from that moment is never going to be the same again. What's up, everyone? It's your boy Kyle Gray. Welcome back to my channel. In this space, I like to look into the intersection between all things magical, spiritual, and wellness, giving you ideas, information for you to have your very own experience. Gone are the ages and the days of gurus. We are here to become our own spiritual leaders. And my life's mission is to help as many people get spiritually connected as humanly possible. And I do that through a number of means, including my online platform, Raise Your Vibration, a number of books centered around helping you connect with your guardian angel, and my favorite part, oracle cards. So many people will write into me and say, hey, can you just help me understand, what is a spiritual awakening? Is a spiritual awakening the same as a kundalini awakening? And then there's a lot of information out there saying it's time for you to wake up. And so a lot of people are kind of meddling the lines between spiritual awakening, far right-wing conspiracy theories, and vibrating intensely on the floor. What is all this stuff that people are speaking about when they're speaking about a spiritual awakening? I'm from the KISS school. No, not the rock band, although I would like that. I'm from the KISS school of keep it simple sorcerer, or keep it simple sister, or keep it simple sunshine, wherever you want to call it. But I'm from that way of thinking is, let's just keep this really simple. For me, a spiritual awakening is a moment where you come into the awareness that you are more than just a body. You're more than just a human being having an individual experience, but ultimately you are a spiritual being embodied in a human shell having a physical three-dimensional experience of the world. That's really what a spiritual awakening is. It's that moment you realize you're more than just this mortal shell, and that you are not only connected to something greater, you are that something greater. So, there's a lot of people saying ever since my spiritual awakening, and then you hear people speak about, having a kundalini awakening, and then that starts to confuse people, like, what's a spiritual awakening? What's a kundalini awakening? I'd like to just break it all down once and for all. A spiritual awakening is usually an event. It often happens around when there's something really traumatic in your life or really emotionally overwhelming in your life. It could come from, having a disease or a loss, a grief, a breakup, a loss of your job, a loss of your finances. It could be being homeless for a moment. Anything that really just disrupts your norm. And it disrupts it in such a way where, you reach out and, kind of drop to your knees in prayer and kind of want to know what's happening to you. And in that moment, you might have this indication that there's a greater power or presence with you. It might be you see a loved one in spirit, or encounter your ancestors, or have this near-death experience, or vision of an entity or a being. Whatever it may be, it's just this moment where from that moment, you are no longer the same. Nothing will ever be the same in your life again. And you realize this kind of interwoven, unseen mystery of life. You realize that there is a bigger, greater power there, and it's flowing through the everything that is, was, and ever will be. That's really what a spiritual awakening is. It's that coming to grips that not only are you having this experience, you can contribute towards it. And your actions, your thoughts, your belief system, your intentions all contribute to the experience you're having on this planet. That's what a spiritual awakening is. And it's usually a moment that invites you to kind of step up to make a difference and align your life to authenticity, and to live in a more clear way. And usually when people have spiritual experiences, that's where they'll feel the need to maybe begin meditating, doing ceremony or ritual work, connecting to their higher power, recognizing that you are manifesting your life, that you are contributing to the experiences that you're having in the planet, that your life is not happening to you but through you, and that you can contribute to it. That's really what a spiritual awakening is. Now, I think most people on the spiritual path have usually had some sort of experience that has encouraged them to wake up. And that wake up means they start to see the world differently. But it doesn't have to be traumatic. It doesn't have to be hugely dramatic. It just could be, oh, I realize I've been living a lie, or I realize I'm not living authentically, or you break up with your partner. It's just that moment you're like, whoa, there's got to be more to life than this. That's what a spiritual awakening is. A kundalini awakening is a little bit different. So what I'll say is, most people who've had a spiritual awakening will tend to have a few of them through their life. They'll wake up, they'll start doing their spiritual practice. If they waver, they might have another one that brings them back to the path, and then they might have another one that brings them back to the path if they waver. A kundalini experience is often when people have missed the spiritual awakening opportunities of their life, where they've kind of fallen into victim spaces, or fallen into this, why is this happening to me? Or, really challenging ways of being, never realizing that they have some sort of impact in their life, their world, feeling victim to every circumstance that has ever happened to them. Now, this is really important to point out. I am not saying that everyone who's encountered something dark or challenging is responsible for that, because there are some messed up people out there, and there are people who are predators and people who hurt. There is no doubt to that. But usually a kundalini experience is walking yourself into a space where you think everything bad is happening to you and you can do nothing about it. And usually what happens is you've had opportunities to have an awakening, you've not woken up, and then you have this full body, near-death experience that freaking catapults you to seeing the world differently. And people who have kundalini experiences often describe it to be the most painful, but yet orgasmic experience of their life. It's like they just get right into the nitty-gritty of the entire universe, and they recognize that the cosmos are not only within them, but all around them, and they are connected to them, and they're still one with them right now. And so kundalini awakenings often look like people on the floor like shaking like that, but they can happen in really tragic, challenging circumstances. And it's really that moment that your body commands the awakening of your soul self. So that's really the difference between a spiritual awakening and a kundalini awakening. What really has frustrated me over the years is that people are using the terminology of spiritual awakenings and kundalini awakenings to kind of force far right-wing conspiracy theories of like, wake up. And they're using it in such a way where they like to call people sheep, and they like to say that you're a follower, not a leader, and all these different things. And I think it's really important to kind of disconnect a spiritual awakening to anything that's kind of politically aligned, because a spiritual awakening is ultimately a personal experience where you recognize that you are not only part and connected to the creator, but you are the creator embodied in some way. That's really what the experience of an awakening is. Now, if you are here right now, there's a good chance that you're on the spiritual path, and there's probably been a circumstance in your life that has led you to investigating or researching or studying spirituality. Something that has made you feel disconnected, something that has then forced you to be connected, And that's usually what your awakening is. And it looks completely different person to person. It's an individuated experience of the soul self. That's really what a spiritual awakening is. It's you having this unique experience of your own spiritual origins and recognizing that you're connected to something greater. So I want you to look back at the circumstances that have led you to have a spiritual interest, that have led you to being, attracted towards healing and wellness and self-study, psychotherapy, anything like that. Whatever that is that has led you to that moment to want to study or research, that's usually your spiritual awakening. And once you have one spiritual awakening, that doesn't mean the deal has been done. You will probably have several experiences through your life that kind of make you see things differently, that ultimately shift your perspective to see things even more clearer than you've seen them before. But these encounters usually kind of get you to a certain point, the next one will happen, you'll wake up even more, and you'll have another one and you'll wake up even more. And if you've missed all these moments to wake up, a kundalini experience is usually the thing where instead of you having the opportunity to decide whether you want to wake up, your soul decides for you and it catapults you through the experience. And it's usually earth-rocking, it usually turns your world upside down. So yeah, that's the difference between a kundalini and a spiritual experience. The important thing you do from these moments is get into a spiritual practice. Actually find a way to create the two-way stream between you and the divine, or you and the higher power, whatever you want to call it. If you don't, then things can start to get a little bit rocky. So people have a spiritual experience, they often don't do anything with it, and then they feel at odds with their life. And that's because they were invited to be a key player in their own life experience in that moment, but didn't want to take on the responsibility for whatever reason, and then fell back into this place of just letting life happen to them rather than deciding how they're going to let life flow through them. And there's a real difference there. So the moment you have an awakening is the opportunity for you to establish a daily spiritual practice, a way of you regularly connecting with your higher power and, uniting in that connection. And from that, then you start to become more aware of what you're supposed to do next, or what steps you can take next to live a more authentically love-centered life, and then that will lead you on your path. But spiritual awakenings don't guarantee that you're going to become a professional spiritual advisor or a healer or anything like that. A spiritual awakening is more a personal encounter that helps you recognize your power and your own influence in your own life experience. Hopefully this video helped you. Have you had a spiritual experience? What led you to where you are today? Take some time to really look at that and be grateful for that experience that has led you to this moment. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments below your personal experience, what you feel about this information. And if you enjoyed this video today, I would be really grateful if you could share it with someone it might help, and subscribe to this channel. And I will see you in the next one.